Alrighty, Pretend here, and finally, with the release of the Go Aventurine, I am here with a full guide going over his kit, briefly going over his Eidolons, briefly going over his best Lightcones, best Relics, the stats you want to aim for, including ornaments, and pretty much teams you can generally run him on. So this guide will be going over both if you are interested in building him as a sustain or a sub DPS. Pretty much, I will be compacting them together. I'm not going to have two separate portions of this. You just can skip to the part you want, or if you can watch throughout the entire video to know what you want to do. Both running him full sustain and running him sub DPS isn't too different. The stat priority is relatively the same as well. So overall, you can pretty much just follow whatever you want to do. And without further ado, let's get straight into it. Drop a sub, drop a like. Yeah. So let's first briefly start off his kit. I'm not going to read it out, but I will put it on the screen, so if you want to read it, go ahead. So, Aventurine is an imaginary preservation character. His basic attack deals imaginary damage equal to 100% of Aventurine's defense to a single target enemy. Moving on to his skill, he is a shielder, so he gives everyone his own version of a shield, which blocks 24% of Aventurine's defense plus 320 for 3 turns. And you can also gain it repeatedly, stacking up to 200% of his effect, so it can indeed stack. And now when you do use his ultimate, it is a single target ultimate that gives him 1 to 7 points of blind bet. If you don't know, blind bet is what he needs to launch a follow-up attack. Not only will it deal damage based on his defense, it will inflict an enemy with a debuff called Unnerved. What Unnerved is pretty much anyone inflicted with Unnerved will be dealt increased crit damage. So if they are inflicted with it, they take 15% more crit damage. Moving on to his talent, anyone that does have Fortified Wager has an increased 50% effect res, which is going to be really good, especially with the path Star Wars going. A lot of things are starting to inflict debuffs, so this is really good already. And pretty much when anyone is attacked that has an Aventurine shield, he does indeed gain 1 point of blind bet, and he also can resist crowd control debuffs himself, and when he gets hit, he gains 2 points of blind bet. And now, if you still didn't understand what blind bet really is, pretty much once you do get the 7 points, you can go from 1 to 7. Once you do hit 7, you launch a 7-hit follow-up attack, dealing imaginary damage based on his defense. It is balanced as well, so it can be a little inconsistent, but it does at least have a consistent damage output. On who it hits is random because, you know, bounce is kind of cringe, but it's still really nice. So now moving on to his bonus abilities. His first one, Bingo, what it does is when anyone has Fortified Wager, aka Shield, if they have the shield and they launch a follow-up attack, it gives them 1 point of blind bet. You can get that 3 times per turn, more specifically Aventurine's turn. And when he does launch his own follow-up attack, he gives a weaker version of everyone's shield. And when he does launch his follow-up attack, he gives everyone a weaker version of his shield. That also does last 3 turns. Obviously, it won't overwrite the shield you have, as it can stack up to the skill effect. So it's just a nice little uptime you can have. His second bonus ability gives everyone a shield that is the equivalent of the skill. So right as you go into battle, everyone will have a Fortified Wager shield. So very nice, you don't have to use a skill point right off the bat. And now for his crazy third ability, every 100 defense that you have that goes past 1600 gives him 2% crit rate up to a maximum of 48% crit rate. I will cover how much crit rate you want for that on the Relic portion, because no matter sustain or if you are building him as a sub DPS sustain, no matter what build, you want to have the full passive on this, because not only are you getting a maximum crit rate buff up to 48%, his shield obviously scales off defense as well. So his defense is also very important, so it's really easy to get this as well. Moving on to his Eidolons, his first Eidolon, anyone with a shield has 20% more crit damage, and after he does use his ultimate, he gives everyone a shield that is equal to the skill for 3 turns. Second Eidolon, using his basic attack, reduces the person you hit all type res by 12% for 3 turns. Fourth Eidolon, when you do proc his follow-up attack, it will first increase his defense by 40% for 2 turns, and it also does increase the follow-up attack's hits by 3. So now instead of hitting 7 times, it hits a total of 10 times. And now for his sixth Eidolon, which turns this guy into a DPS completely, anyone that holds his shield will give him 50% damage dealt, up to 150%. So if you do have his shield up, everyone on your team has a shield excluding him, he gets a 150% damage bonus. So again, it doesn't include him, it has to be the 3 other people that isn't him. When they have the shield, it gives him more damage dealt. He deals so much damage with this, it's unreal. Moving on to his best Lightcones, his best Lightcone, no matter whether you're running his sustain or you're running his sub DPS / sustain, his best Lightcone is going to be his signature Lightcone. Because what it provides not only has a 40% stat stick to defense, it also makes it to where when he does provide a shield, which is practically always, it gives him 40% crit damage. It only lasts for 2 turns, but because of how often you give the shield, it is insanely easy to keep uptime on that, so it's just a nice damage boost. And when you do use a follow-up attack, it will have a 100% base chance to increase the damage taken by the enemy's hit by 10% for 2 turns, and because his follow-up attack procs so often, you practically almost have this up always as well. And if you are running him with Acheron, it is also considered a debuff, so that's another big plus. So no matter if you're running him sustain, no matter you're running him sub DPS, this one is going to be his best one. The next best option you can do, which is better for the sustain portion of Aventurine if you are looking to build him more of a sustain, but is also still good for DPS, is Jetbird's Lightcone. Because it not only gives him 24% defense, it increases the chance to get hit, and if you guys do remember, if he gets hit, he gets 2 points of blind bet, and when he does get hit, he gets an extra 24% defense. So you do get an 8% higher bonus when he is hit compared to his signature Lightcone. It also does give 24% effect hit rate, but that is pretty much useless on Aventurine, so you don't have to worry about that part, but this is another fantastic Lightcone you can use on him. A fantastic option for DPS or sub DPS Aventurine is going to be the new 4-star Lightcone on his banner, a Concert for 2. Because it does also give you a defense stat stick, which obviously will scale with refinement, but at R1 it is a 16% increase in defense, and anyone on the battle that has a shield will increase the damage dealt by the wearer by 4%. So it's a nice little increase to his damage while also giving him defense, making it easier to hit the defense requirement that you want to have on him. So this is another option that is going to be really good for anyone looking to build him as a sub DPS. Another really good Lightcone that you can use that is completely free to play, but is a little better for the sub DPS side, is Destiny's Threads for Wolver. Not only does it give you effect res, making it a lesser chance to be inflicted with debuffs, obviously not that great starting off because Aventurine for the most part won't really be afflicted with debuffs. For every 100 defense the wearer has, the damage dealt increases by 0.8%, and this is at R1, up to maximum increase of 32%. Again, R1 will go up with refinements, and again, with how much defense you want to give him, it's really easy to capitalize off this. So this is another really good option you can use. Now moving a little more on the sustain side, another one you can use is Day 1 of My New Life, because it does also give him a defense stat stick that you can use. And once you do enter battle, it increases all type res of all allies by 8%. So you do get a nice little all type res bonus for your team. So this is another option you can use if you don't want to use the other ones, or you're looking to build them sustain, but you don't want to use something like the free-to-play one, or if you don't have the other ones and you don't want to use them, this is an option you can use as well. And obviously, I'm not going to talk about it, but you can, if you are running him with Acheron, you can use Shrine of the Universal Market. I'm not going to get into why, because this is a general build, not an Acheron build. Now moving on to the Relic portion of this video, I'm going to start it off with talking about Knight of the Pyramid Palace. This is a fantastic set for him, but personally, a lot of people do say they're going to run 4-piece on him, which you can do, but once you do hit the stat requirement that I'm going to talk about after talking about what relic sets you want to run, when you do have that much defense, I personally do think the max damage absorbed by the shield created by the wearer by 20%, although it is the only really way you can get max damage absorbed increase to make the shield even tankier. I personally think once you do hit that stat requirement, his defense is already plenty enough for his shield, so his shield is already plenty strong enough. So personally, I would not recommend it, but running 4-piece of this is an option you can do. Again, this is mainly for the pure sustain side. It will also help his damage a bit because he does scale off defense. The 2-piece is very much recommended by me included. And now a thing you can do to pair him if you are running him as a slight sub DPS, which again is the way I slightly recommend you would build him. Because if you do build them with the right main stats, the right sub stats, it is really easy to build them as a sub DPS that also has the full sustaining capabilities. But if you really want to go the full sustain capability route, that's completely fine. And so the next options would be pairing the Knight of Purity Palace with something like the follow-up set, because most of his damage will come from his follow-up set, so you can rock that. Getting 2-piece of Purity Palace with 2-piece of the follow-up set, you get the defense bonus, and you also get a 20% damage up by follow-up attack increase. Another option you can pair the Purity Palace with is actually the Pioneer / debuff set, because he can inflict his own debuff, and for the most part, a lot of his best teams will be characters that can inflict some form of debuff. So it does increase damage dealt to enemies with debuffs by 12%, making it another fantastic option you can use. And then the final pairing I could say you could do, but probably won't warrant the best results, would be running 2-piece Purity Palace and 2-piece Imaginary set, just increasing his imaginary damage. This will probably give you the least damage bonus / sub DPS potential, but if you do have good imaginary pieces, it is an option you can do. I'm not saying it's bad, but it is an option you can use. And now for something very specific, you could also do 4-piece Pioneers. The only time I would recommend you rocking this is if you have his Lightcone or if you have E2, because you definitely do want another way to inflict the debuff, because the way you get the full bonus from this set is by inflicting a debuff, and you also want to have it on someone with 2 or 3 debuffs. So if you have his light cone, you have one way to inflict it with his ult and the other way with his follow-up attack. So you just need someone else on a team that can inflict 1 debuff to get the full bonus, and then obviously he can get the aforementioned increase by 100% by himself. And then obviously if you have the E2, his basic attack now inflicts an all-type res debuff, so that's another way you can get it. But again, I would only recommend rocking this 2 ways actually. If you have the light cone, if you have E2, and if you're going to have the defense requirement that I'm about to get into. So before getting into stats, let's talk about his planet ornaments. For Sustained Aventurine, rocking Broken Keel is completely fine on him because it gives him increased effect res, which again isn't really a problem with him. You practically always have this active too, because when effect res is at 30% or higher, all allies crit damage increases by 10%. So that is another option you can use, giving everyone 10% crit damage, just a nice little support that you can get. But for the best value out of his own damage as well, the best option you can do is Inner Salsado, because it does also give him 8% crit rate, and when he does a 50% or higher crit rate, increases his ultimate damage and follow-up attack damage by 15%. Again, that's where his main source of damage will be. So getting a nice 15% bonus on there, also with a nice 8% crit rate bonus, is going to be really nice, especially with the stat requirements and his bonus trace giving him a bunch of crit rate. It is extremely easy to get that 15% crit rate. For Sustained Aventurine again, Fleet of the Aegis is another option you can use. And a slightly more situational ornament you can use is the Penacony set, but I'd only recommend using that if you are using him with obviously a main damage imaginary character. So if you're pairing him with someone like Dr. Ratio or Danheng, that is an option you can use. And now moving on to his stats, this does depend on how much you want to do. So the goal of defense is to get it to 4,000. Once you get Aventurine's defense to 4,000, you will pretty much have the full bonus from the trace. Not only will you have the full effect on the trace, at 4,000 defense, his shield is incredibly strong. And so for the main stats, the general rule is going to be having crit damage body, speed boots, imaginary damage orb, and defense percent. And pretty much what you want to do is make sure you get the 4,000 defense mark. So what you will do is sub out those main stats. So if you're rocking that, first you would sub out the crit damage body or the orb, obviously. So you just pretty much sub it out, whatever you need to sub out to get the 4,000 defense. And you just want to make sure, I personally would say, I want to make sure you do have speed boots on, because he does benefit from having speed, just in case you have a time where your shield breaks. And so having speed will make it to where you can pop the skill more, just in case things do get bad. And obviously having more uptime on getting energy back, having his ult up, inflicting a debuff, making enemies take more damage, all that kind of stuff is really helpful. But again, pretty much just sub out the main stats till you do hit that threshold, and you will be good to go. For the substats, again, you want to prioritize defense percent until you do have the 4,000 threshold that I talked about. Past that, it's pretty free from there, just focusing on crit stats or speed, because again, speed is pretty important on him, but having crit damage will be nice just so he can deal some more damage. Crit rate will also be nice, because while his bonus trace does give him a bunch of crit rate, obviously it's not giving you 100%, so you do want to have some to sub it up, just so you can crit a little more consistently. And now for the relative stat goals you want to have on your Aventurine. Again, defense, make sure that is 4K. That is going to be your first goal at all times. For his speed, I just recommend having his speed be 134, aka the breakpoint. Once you get it past that, you are pretty good to go. I'd recommend for crit rate to have at least 25 to 30%, not including his trace, because if you have 4K defense, you would take the 25-30 and add 48 to that. You want to make sure you have it on the higher side so he's a little more consistent. And as for his crit damage, it depends. If you are wanting to build him as a slight sub DPS, you want to make sure you have about 120% or higher. And if you are running him as a pure sustain, then obviously that doesn't really matter to you. And now moving on to the team building part of this video. Thankfully, because he is a sustained character, practically any team you use will be fantastic. Because again, he is at core a sustained character, he will work on practically every team. Although his best teams will be something like Dr. Ratio, Topaz can't show you because I don't have her yet, and then rocking a Harmony support on that team, because again, he's sustained. It's not like you're gonna need to rock another sustain on this team. So very big W with that. He's also fantastic with Akron teams, so you can rock something like this. Or if you do not have Akron E2 or you're rocking two Nihildes, something just like this. If I can find my Pela. I can't find my Pela for some reason. I'm blind. There she is. Alright, something like that. And then past that, it's really up to you. The only time you don't want to have him on a team is going to be with this guy right here. You don't want to rock him with Blade because, as you guys do know, Blade consumes his HP. He wants to get hit and he wants to have his HP drained. So while he does have own ways to drain HP, he also benefits from getting hit and losing HP. Because if you do have Aventurine shield on him, he will take a hit, he won't lose HP, and so he can't gain a stack and can't gain his buffs. So Blade is the only character I do not recommend using him with. And so that is the video. That is how you want to go about building your Aventurine. I hope you guys have summoned and gotten lucky on him because he's probably going to be a big meta change to the game. He's also just a fantastic character and the GOAT. So again, hope you guys got him. Hope you guys found this video helpful. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Peace out.